Hello and welcome to the First for Schools training video by Dara Cultural in collaboration with Language Rooms. Today we're looking at paper 2, writing part 1, the essay. We're going to consider how to best plan and approach the essay task in order to do well on the day of the exam. So let's get straight to it. Okay, so first things first, you make sure that you understand your question. Read the question carefully. Understand your main topic. So the main topic is in the introduction, where you're told what you've been talking about in class, and it's in the question at the top of the pretend notepad that you will see in the exam task. Make sure you understand your content points and start figuring out what you're going to say, because you don't want to go off task. So as you can see in this task, you have been talking about becoming independent, and you have to write an essay about teenagers becoming independent. The question is, do you think that teenagers these days need to be more independent? Your content points are choosing their own entertainment, having their own money, and your own idea. Make sure your own idea is very clearly different to those content points. So while you write, you need to bear in mind how you are going to be marked. Cambridge examiners will use the Cambridge examining scales to mark you on 4 criteria: content, communicative achievement, organisation, and language. You need to aim high. You need to be aiming for those 5 points in each of the criteria to allow for potential mistakes, nerves on the day, etc. Okay, so the content points are the easiest 5 points you're going to get. The first thing you need to do is bear in mind the word count. The question tells you to write your answer in 140 to 190 words. However, as you can see at that top box there for the 5 points in content, target reader is fully informed. It is not possible to fully inform your target reader if you write fewer than 180 words. So keep your word count high. So the next thing to bear in mind in terms of content is relevancy to the task. Make sure that you answer the question fully. Refer back to the question as you are writing. Make sure that you answer each of the content points and that your idea is clearly different to the content points given in the task. If it isn't, examiners may think that your idea is just a follow-on of the content in the task, and you will go down the scale. So in order to get full marks in communicative achievement, you need to make sure that you use an essay structure as you write, which means you need an introduction, you need developmental paragraphs, and you need a very clear, strong conclusion. You also need to make sure that your language is of an academic style, standard, so the register needs to be academic enough for an essay, which means formal or semi-formal language. Communicative achievement is also about how well you communicate with your reader and how much your reader understands and how interesting your essay is. So it's very closely linked with organisation. A lack of organisation in your thoughts and in your language could affect how well I understand what you're trying to say. So even though you're using the correct linguistic register, if your ideas aren't organised properly, you're going to go down the scale. Organisation is possibly the easiest of the criteria to understand. What they are asking you to do is to ensure that your text is well organised. You need to use linking devices, cohesive devices, those glue sentences and bridging sentences that we look at when we're doing part 6 of reading and use of English. You need to ensure that you've got organisational patterns, so you refer back and forth during the course of the text. Finally, we come to language. Obviously, this is the most difficult of the 4 criteria to do well in, mainly because of the word range. If you look at that top point there, it says uses a range of vocabulary, uses a range of simple and complex grammatical forms with flexibility. So that means you need to push yourself. You need to step outside of that comfort zone. You cannot get those 5 points in language if you play it safe. If you write in the simple present or simple past for the entire text, even if your language is perfect, you will not get those 5 points. If you stick to basic everyday language, you will not get those 5 points, even if you make no mistakes. So let's look at each of those criteria separately. So first of all, vocabulary. You are asked to use a range of vocabulary, including less common lexes, appropriately. What does that mean? Well, first of all, they're not looking for perfection. Minimal errors are allowed so long as they don't impede communication. You are expected to use verb-noun collocations correctly, prepositional phrases, and all of those language elements that are, appropriate or correct for the level. So on to grammar. You need to use a range of simple and complex grammatical forms with flexibility and control, which means that you should not be making mistakes. You should be using both the simple forms like present simple, present continuous, past simple, past continuous, the basic futures, and the more difficult perfect tenses like the future perfect and past perfect. The conditionals, also second and third conditionals, would be useful in terms of ensuring that you have that variety of more complex grammatical forms. Occasional errors may be present but do not impede communication, which means that they are not going to penalise you for making those errors in that more complex language. But you should definitely make sure that it's not present in the simple language. One last thing to consider is the varieties of English. You are expected to choose one variety of English, so either the British or the American spelling structures, and stick to that throughout the essay. Do not mix them, because if you mix them, one or other will be considered an error, and you will lose points for that. So to recap. So before you start writing, organize your ideas. Make sure you know exactly what you want to say. Asking yourself closed questions, so questions beginning with do or does or is or are, will help you to focus your ideas to simple yes or no concepts from which you can then develop. Give yourself a few minutes to plan your essay. Make sure you have a clear idea for your introduction for each of the development paragraphs and your conclusion. Don't forget your introduction should mirror your conclusion, and it should set up the answer that you're going to give, or at least hint to the answer you're going to give in it. Each of the paragraphs should then develop fully one of the content points. Make sure that your conclusion then sums everything up nicely. You must express your opinions throughout the essay. Academic writing requires a kind of detached stance or point of view, so you need to be writing from a distance. That means not overusing I think. If you do need to express or introduce your thoughts with that type of language, use phrases such as my opinion, in my view, etc. instead of I think, and do not use it more than once or twice at a maximum. Don't forget that everything you write in your essay is, by nature of the fact it's your essay, your opinion. Make sure that you present your contrasting points of view, so on the one hand, on the other hand, however, etc., to make sure that the essay is interesting and that you've considered both the pros and cons of whatever it is that you're writing about. Remember to use that variety of vocabulary and grammatical structures that we talked about before, and don't over-rely on the same language. As you're practicing your essays, you should have a thesaurus to hand and make use of it to choose synonyms and antonyms in order to make and create that variety. And don't forget that you're writing an essay, which means you need to use an academic register. This means that language should be formal or semi-formal. You cannot use contractions or slang. So words like don't and can't and gonna and wanna are not acceptable. Okay, guys, so now it's time to understand the level. Take the scales, read the question, make sure you understand the exam task and what the content points are supposed to be, because you are about to read an example answer and I expect you to mark it for me. So pause the video for a few minutes, take your time, read over the answer, the sample answer, and then we will go through the marks that this candidate got for the answer. Okay, so I'm sure you will all have figured out that this is a very high level, and in fact, the candidate gets 5 out of 5 in each of the 4 criteria. As you can see, all the content is relevant, the target reader is fully informed, and the 2 points in the question are developed appropriately, as well as the third choice of career idea, which is added in. For communicative achievement, he gets a 5 because the conventions of essay writing are used effectively. He develops straightforward and more complex ideas, for example, in the third paragraph, where he combines the second and third points. The balance of general and more specific comments holds the target reader's attention throughout, so it's a very high standard of communicative achievement. The organisation is exceptional. There is a variety of cohesive devices and patterns both within and across sentences and paragraphs. The essay makes good use of organisational features such as parallelism to build up a sequence of ideas. The overall structure is well planned, moving from a general opening statement to specific details and ending with a very strong conclusion. Finally, language. There is a range of vocabulary, there is less common lexis, which is all used appropriately, and there is good use of collocation, such as common knowledge, demands on teenagers, decision, imposed, profession, etc. Good control is demonstrated over a range of grammatical forms, and errors are minimal. Okay, so now over to you. Read the exam question and write your answer, bearing in mind the 3 content points and everything we talked about in terms of the scales. Keep a thesaurus to hand and make sure that you keep that language and those grammar structures nice and varied. And good luck! For more English language training videos like this, please follow Dara Cultural and Language Rooms on social media, and we look forward to the next video. Till then, bye-bye.